Okay, so I'm going to go through and read from these 102 results and 94 verses, all the occurrences of the lemma um, kaf, pe, resh, kafar, or what most people are familiar with the word kiper. So we're going to work through this lemma to atone. So we'll start here, Genesis 6:14. Make for yourself an ark of cypress wood. You must make the ark with rooms. Then you must cover it with pitch inside and outside. There, the word is translated as cover. And moreover, you shall say, look, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, let me appease him with the gift going before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will show me favor. There, the verb is translated as let me appease him. Exodus 29:33. And they will eat them, the things by which atonement was made for them, to ordain them, to consecrate them, and a stranger will not eat them because they are holy objects. There, the word is atonement, being made for them. That's how it's being translated. Exodus 29:36. And you will offer a bull for a sin offering every day for atonement, for the atonement. And you will offer a sin offering on the altar. Exodus 29:36, and you will offer a bull for a sin offering every day for the atonement, and you will offer a sin offering on the altar when you make atonement for it, and you will anoint it to consecrate it. There you're making atonement for the altar. That's how the verb's being translated. Exodus 29:37, 7 days you will make atonement for the altar, and you will consecrate it, and the altar will be a most holy thing. Anyone who touches the altar will be holy. There it's being translated as make atonement. You make atonement for the altar in Exodus 29:37. Exodus 30:10, and Aaron will make atonement on its horns one time in the year from the blood of the sin offering of the atonement. One time in the year he will make atonement on it throughout your generations. It is a most holy thing for Yahweh. That's Exodus 30, verse 10. There it occurs twice. Make atonement on it. Make atonement on it. Exodus 30:15, the rich will not give more, and the poor will not give less than the half shekel to give the contribution of Yahweh to make atonement for their lives. There the verb is translated, make atonement for. Exodus 30, verse 16, and you will take the atonement money from the Israelites. You will take, it's funny, Haki Purim is there as well. And you will take the atonement money from the Israelites and give it to the service of the tent of assembly, and it will be as a memorial for the Israelites before Yahweh to make atonement for your lives. There it is again, to make atonement. Exodus 32:30, there money is making atonement. Exodus 32:30, and the next day Moses said to the people, you have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up to Yahweh. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. Here Moses is talking about making intercession, and he's going to make atonement for their sin. He's referring to going to talking to Yahweh. Leviticus 1:4, and he must lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted for him in order to make atonement for him. There it's being translated to make atonement for him. Look, a parallel. Leviticus 4:20, he shall do to the bull just as he did to the sin offerings bull, so he must do to it. The priest shall make atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. Again, him to make atonement for them. Leviticus 4:26, he must turn all of its fat into smoke on the altar like the fat of the fellowship offering sacrifice, and the priest shall make atonement for him because of his sin, and he will be forgiven. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 4:31, he must remove all of its fat just as the fat was removed from the fellowship offering sacrifice, and the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar as an appeasing fragrance for Yahweh. The priest shall make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. Again, make atonement for him. Leviticus 4:35, he must remove all of its fat, just as the lamb's fat from the fellowship offering sacrifice was removed, and the priest shall turn them into smoke on the altar upon Yahweh's offerings made by fire. And the priest shall make atonement for him because of his sin that he committed, and he will be forgiven. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 5:6, and he shall bring his guilt offering to Yahweh for his sin that he has committed, a female from the flock, an ewe lamb or a she-goat as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 5:10, the second bird he must prepare as a burnt offering according to the regulation, and the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin that he has committed, and he shall be forgiven. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 5:13, thus the priest shall make atonement for him because of the sin that he has committed in any of these, and he shall be forgiven. It shall be for the priest, like the grain offering. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 5:16, and he shall make restitution for what he sinned because of a holy thing, and shall add 1/5 of its value onto it, and shall give it to the priest. The priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. You can call that a restitution offering. It's an asham. But again, there it's make atonement for him. Leviticus 5:18, he shall bring to the priest a ram without defect from the flock as an asham or guilt offering by your valuation, and the priest shall make atonement for him because of his unintentional wrong, although he himself did not know, and he will be forgiven. So make atonement for him. Leviticus 6:7, and the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh, and he shall be forgiven anything from all that he might do by which he might incur guilt. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 6:30, but any sin offering or chatat, it's like a purification offering, but any sin offering from which some of its blood is brought to the tent of assembly to make atonement in the sanctuary must not be eaten. It must be burned in the fire. So it says, it's in the infinitive, to make atonement in the sanctuary. Leviticus 7:7. The instruction is the same for the asham as for the chatat. The instruction is the same for the sin offering, or for the guilt offering as for the sin offering. It belongs to the priest who makes atonement with it. Make atonement with it. Leviticus 8:15. And he slaughtered it, and Moses took the blood and put it with his finger on the altar's horns all around and purified the altar. Then he poured the blood out on the altar's base. Thus he consecrated it in order to make atonement for it. So Leviticus 8:15, Moses uses blood to make atonement for the altar. Make atonement for it. Leviticus 8:34, just as was done on this day, Yahweh commanded to be done in order to make atonement for you. So he's made atonement for a human being, alechem, all of you. That was Leviticus 8:34. Leviticus 9:7. Then Moses said to Aaron, approach the altar and sacrifice your chatat, your sin offering, your purification offering, and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people, and sacrifice the people's offering and make atonement for them, just as Yahweh has commanded. Leviticus, so it's made twice, make atonement for yourself and make atonement for them. Leviticus 10:17. Why did you not eat the chatat, or the sin offering, the purification offering, on the sanctuary site? Because it is a most holy thing, and gave it to you, and he gave it to you to remove the community's guilt, to make atonement for them before Yahweh. Make atonement for them. Leviticus 12:7. And the priest shall present it before Yahweh, and he shall make atonement for her, so that she shall be clean from the flow of her blood. This is the regulation of childbearing, for the male, for the female. So Leviticus 12:7, he shall make atonement for the mother who gave birth to a child. Leviticus 12:8, and if she cannot afford a sheep, then she shall take 2 turtle doves, or 2 young doves, one is a burnt offering and one is a sin offering, or a purification offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her, so that she shall be clean. So that she should be, that was Leviticus 12:8. Make atonement for her. Leviticus 14:18, and the remaining oil that is on the priest's palm, he shall put on the head of the one who presents himself for cleansing, and the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh. That's the leper, I believe. Leviticus 14:19, thus the priest shall sacrifice the purification offering, and he shall make atonement for the one who presents himself for cleansing from his uncleanness, and after he shall slaughter the burnt offering. Leviticus 14:19. Leviticus 14:20, then the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar, and the priest shall make atonement for him, and so he shall be clean. Make atonement for him. Leviticus 14:21, but if he is poor and he cannot afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb for a guilt offering, or an asham, as a wave offering, to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of finely milled flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and a log of oil. Leviticus 14:21. Leviticus 14:29, and the remaining oil that is on the priest's palm he shall put on the head of the one who presents himself for cleansing, to make atonement for him before Yahweh. Leviticus 14:31, even what he can afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, in addition to the grain offering, and the priest shall make atonement for the one who presents himself for cleansing before Yahweh. Leviticus 14:53, and he shall send a living bird outside the city into the open field, and so he shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. So in Leviticus 14:53, v'kiper al habayit v'taher, he makes atonement for a house. Leviticus 15:15, and the priest shall sacrifice one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and so the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh from his body fluid discharge. So a priest is making atonement for someone who has a body fluid discharge. Leviticus 15:30, and the priest shall sacrifice the one as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering, and so the priest shall make atonement for her before Yahweh from her unclean body fluid discharge. Again, body fluid discharge, atonement's being made for a woman in this instance. Leviticus 16:6, and we're now getting into the Day of Atonement. And Aaron shall present the sin offering's bull, which is for himself, and so he shall make atonement for himself and for his family. Leviticus 16:10. This is famous. But he must present alive before Yahweh the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell, to make atonement for himself, to send it away in the desert to Azazel. So the goat for Azazel is to make atonement for Aaron. Aaron presents the goat for Azazel to make atonement for Aaron. L'kaper alav, to make atonement for himself. And Aaron, Leviticus 16:11, and Aaron shall present the sin offering's bull, which is for himself, and so he shall make atonement for himself and for his family. Then he shall slaughter the sin offering's bull, which is for himself. Leviticus 16:16. Thus he shall make atonement for the sanctuary from the Israelites' impurities and from their transgressions for all their sins. And so he must do for the tent of assembly, which dwells with them in the midst of their impurities. So in Leviticus 16:16, he makes atonement for the sanctuary and from the tent of assembly dwelling in the midst of Israel's impurities. Leviticus 16:17, and no person shall be in the tent of assembly when he enters to make atonement in the sanctuary until he comes out. And so he shall make atonement for himself and for his family and for all of Israel's assembly. Leviticus 16:18. Then he shall go out to the altar that is before Yahweh, and he shall make atonement for it. And he shall take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood, and he shall put it all around on the altar's horns. Leviticus 16:20. And so, I'm sorry, Leviticus 16:18, he makes atonement for the altar by applying the blood. Leviticus 16:20. And he shall finish making atonement for the sanctuary and the tent of assembly and the altar. Then he shall present the living goat. So he makes atonement for the sanctuary, the tent, the assembly, and the altar. All these things need to have atonement made for them. Leviticus 16:24. And he shall wash his body with water in a holy place, and he shall put on his garments and go out and sacrifice his burnt offering and the people's burnt offering, and so he shall make atonement for himself and for people. Leviticus 16:27. And the sin offering's bull and the sin offering's goat, whose blood was brought to make atonement in the sanctuary. That is a side note. When atonement is made when atonement's being made in the sanctuary, it's accomplished through blood. So the goat that was selected for Yahweh by lot, its blood is used to make atonement in the sanctuary. That goat shall be brought outside the camp, and they shall burn their hide and their flesh and their offal in the fire. Leviticus 16:30, because on this day he shall make atonement for you to cleanse you. You must be clean from all your sins before Yahweh. Ki b'yom hazeh yokaper alechem l'taher etchem mikol hachatotechem lifnei Yahweh. And then that last line is Tatharu, sorry, the very small print. Because on this day shall make atonement for you to cleanse you. You must be clean from all your sins before Yahweh. That was Leviticus 16:30. Moving on, Leviticus 16:32. And the priest who is anointed and who is ordained to serve as a priest in place of his father shall make atonement. Thus he shall put on the linen garments, the holy garments. So he makes atonement. The priest serving in the place of his father makes atonement. Leviticus 16:33. And he shall make atonement for the sanctuary's holy place, and he shall make atonement for the tent of assembly and the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priests and for all of the assembly's people. That occurs 3 times in that verse. Leviticus 16:34. And this shall be a lasting statute for you to make atonement for the Israelites 1 time in a year from all their sins. And he did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Okay. Leviticus 17:11. Okay, indeed, the flesh's life is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your lives, because it is the blood with the life that makes atonement. Leviticus 17:11 says that the life which is in the blood of creatures has been given to Israel and on the altar. So it's not just been given arbitrarily, it's been given on the altar, and there in the right place, the life in the blood makes atonement for their lives, because it is the blood with the life that makes atonement. So that occurs twice there. And it speculates that it is the life that's in the blood that is the source of atonement and why it's been given to be put on the altar. Leviticus 19:22. And the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh with the ram of the guilt offering for his sin that he committed, and so his sin that he committed shall be forgiven him. Make atonement. Leviticus 23:28. And you must not do any regular work on this very same day, because it is the day of atonement to make atonement for you before Yahweh your God. That's Leviticus 23:28. It's to make atonement on the Day of Atonement. And we've just made it through Leviticus. We're now in Numbers 5:8. But if the man does not have a redeemer to make a restitution for him, but if the man does not have a redeemer to make restitution to him for the reparation is to be given to Yahweh for the priest, in addition to the ram of atonement by which atonement is made for him. Hakipurim asher yukaper bo alav. Yeah, so this is a ram of atonement being made for a man. Numbers 6:11, and the priest will offer one for a sin offering or purification offering and one for a burnt offering, and he will make atonement for him because he sinned concerning the corpse. He will consecrate his head on that day. That's when a Nazarite ends up breaking their separation by coming into contact with the dead. And atonement needs to be made for him. Numbers 8:12, and the Levites will lay their hands on the head of the one bull and offer it as a sin offering and the other one as a burnt offering to Yahweh to make atonement for the Levites. And so the atonement is made for the Levites. Numbers 8:19, we're working our way through. We're in Numbers 8 verse 19. And I have given to the Levites, they are given to Aaron and his sons from the midst of the Israelites to do the work of the Israelites in the tent of the assembly and to make atonement for the Israelites. So a plague will not be among the Israelites when the Israelites come near the sanctuary. Their presence, the presence of the Levites, makes atonement for the Israelites. The Levites are an atonement for the Israelites. Numbers 8:21, and the Levites purified themselves, and they washed their garments, and Aaron offered them as a wave offering before Yahweh, and Aaron made atonement for them to purify them. So here Aaron makes atonement for the Levites in order to purify them to function in their duty. That was Numbers 8:21. Numbers 15:25. Okay, the priests will make atonement for all the community of Israelites, and they will be forgiven because it was unintentional. They will bring their offering, an offering made by fire for Yahweh, their sin offering before Yahweh for their unintentional sin. So the priest makes atonement for the community. Numbers 15:28, and the priest will make atonement for the person who sinned unintentionally before Yahweh to make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. It occurs twice there. Numbers 16:46, and Moses and Aaron said, take the censer and put fire on it from the altar. Place incense on it and bring it quickly to the community and make atonement for them because wrath went out from the presence of Yahweh and a plague has begun. Moses tells Aaron and instructs him to place incense on a censer, and with the incense, make atonement for the sin of the community who has surrounded the tent trying to kill Moses and Aaron. So he uses incense to make atonement for the people. Number 16:47, and so Aaron took it just as Moses had spoken, and he ran into the midst of the assembly, for behold, the plague had begun among the people, so he gave the incense and made atonement for the people. Using the incense, Aaron made atonement. Numbers 25:13, and it will be for him and his offspring after him a covenant of an eternal priesthood because he was jealous for God and made atonement for the Israelites. So this is about Phinehas. His zeal makes atonement for the Israelites. So it's a covenant of eternal priesthood because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the Israelites. His jealousy made atonement for the Israelites. Numbers 28:22, and a goat for one sin offering to make atonement for you. Numbers 28:30, and one male goat to make atonement for you. Numbers 29:5, with one male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you. Numbers 31:50, so we brought the offering of Yahweh, what each man found, objects of gold, bangles, bracelets, rings, earrings, and female ornaments to make atonements for ourselves before Yahweh. So here, gold, bangles, bracelets, rings, earrings, and female ornaments are used to make atonement for the people. For Israel before Yahweh. So gold is used. Numbers 35:33. So you will not pollute the land in which you are, because blood pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land for the blood that is poured out on it, except with the blood of the one who poured it out. And so here we have the idea that blood poured out on the land. No atonement through sacrifice on the altar can make up for human blood that is shed on the land, except for the blood of the one who shed the blood. This is even so for people who do it accidentally. They have to stay in the city of refuge, but they are atoned for it when the high priest dies. So in Numbers 35, when the high priest dies, then people will accidentally shed blood. Their atonement is made and they can go out. So the death of the high priest functions as atonement for people who accidentally slaughter while they wait in the city of refuge. We're done with Numbers. We did Numbers 35:33. We're now in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 21:8, forgive your people, Israel, whom you redeemed, Yahweh, and do not allow the guilt of innocent blood in the midst of your people, Israel, and let them be forgiven with regard to blood. It says here forgive, but this is actually in the ritual with the heifer for the unsolved mystery of a murder, and the elders say this, Kaper la'amcha Yisrael asher fadita Yahweh va'al titan damna ki bekerev amcha Yisrael v'nakaper, sorry, the font is so small, v'nakaper lahim hadam, with regard to the blood. It's saying forgiven here, but it's actually atone your people, Israel, whom you redeemed, Yahweh, and do not allow the guilt of innocent blood in the midst of your people, and let them be atoned for with regard to blood. And again, this is a ritual with a heifer. It seems that they actually strike it on the neck and the blood pours out in the water. In your English Bible, it may say break the neck of it, but they actually use an axe to do it. Deuteronomy 32:43. Call for songs of joy, O nations, concerning his people. For the blood of his servants he will avenge, and he will take reprisals against his foes, and he will make atonement for his land, his people. That's Yahweh making atonement for the land. All right, we got through Deuteronomy. We're in 1 Samuel 3:14. Therefore I swore to the house of Eli that the iniquity of the house of Eli would not be atoned for by sacrifice or by offering forever. So Yahweh says this sin in the house of Eli is not going to be atoned for. 2 Samuel 21:3. Noting it says by sacrifice or by offering. 2 Samuel 21:3. So David asked the Gibeonites, what can I do for you? And with what can I make amends that you may bless the inheritance of Yahweh? So the Gibeonites were mistreated by Saul. And he actually says here, it's translated, what can I do to make amends? Make amends is how it's being translated there, but it means atone, to cover up, so that how can we cover this appropriately? 1 Chronicles 6:49, but Aaron and his sons made offerings on the altar of burnt offering and on the altar of incense for all the work of the most holy place, and to make atonement for Israel according to all that Moses, servant of God, had commanded. That's 1 Chronicles 6:49, make atonement for Israel. 2 Chronicles 29:24, and the priests killed them and offered their blood against the altar to make atonement for all Israel, for the king had commanded the burnt offering, the sin offering for all Israel. Okay, priest is making atonement for them, and their blood's being offered. Okay, 2 Chronicles 30:18, for a majority of the people, many from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, but they ate the Passover sacrifice otherwise than prescribed. But Hezekiah had prayed for them, saying, may the good Yahweh make atonement for them. In other words, may Yahweh just atone for them, even though they're not ritually clean. Very beautiful prayer by Hezekiah. Nehemiah 10, just Yahweh just making atonement, just covering it over. Nehemiah 10:33, for the rows of bread, the offering of the daily sacrifice, the continual burnt sacrifice, the Sabbaths, the new moon festivals, the appointed festival times, the holy objects, the sin offerings that make atonement for Israel and for all the work of the house of our God. So sin offerings to the chatat that make atonement. That's in Nehemiah. Psalm 65:3, iniquities prevail over me. As for our transgression, you will forgive them. It's being translated, you will forgive them there. It's actually should have said, as for our transgressions, you will atone for them. Psalm 78:38, but he was compassionate. He pardoned their guilt and did not destroy them. And many times he turned back his anger and did not stir up all his wrath. Here's the relationship between atone and wrath. It doesn't say he pardoned their guilt. He atoned for their guilt. V'hu rechum yukaper avon. He's compassionate. He atones for their guilt. And this is the idea of turning back his anger, not stirring up his wrath. These are all synonyms, parallelistic of each other. Psalm 79:9. Help us, O God of our salvation, for the glory of your name, and deliver us and forgive our sins for the sake of your name. Atone for our sins for the sake of your name. It's a prayer. Psalm 79, verse 9. V'hatzilenu v'kaper al ha-chatotenu. Sorry, small font. Lama'an shemicha, for the sake of your name. Proverbs 16:6. By loyalty and faithfulness, or by loyal love and faithfulness, iniquity will be covered over. And by fear of Yahweh, one turns from evil. Bechesed ve'emet yakupar avon. Sin will be atoned for. I think it's in the pool. Proverbs 16:14. The wrath of a king is a messenger of death, but one who is wise will appease it. There it's translated as will appease it. It's actually Yakaperana. It's the idea of he will appeasing the wrath of a king. Is that it's making atonement, it's covering it over. We're now in Isaiah 6:7. And he touched my mouth and he said, look, this has touched your lips and has removed your guilt and your sin is annulled. It's actually atoned for. Tukupar. This is actually when Isaiah sees Yahweh in the temple, and he says, I'm a man of unclean lips. I come from a people of unclean lips. Woe is me. And this angel comes down, he grabs a coal from the altar, and he burns he touches his lips, and he says, it's atoned for. So with the coal from the altar, atonement is made on Isaiah's mouth. And Isaiah 22:14, and it was revealed in my ears by Yahweh of hosts, surely this sin will not be atoned for until you die, says the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Okay, it won't be atoned for. Isaiah 27:9, therefore by this he will make atonement for the guilt of Jacob, and this will be all the fruit of the removal of his sin, when he makes all the stones of the altar like crushed stones of chalk. No poles of Asherah worship or incense altars will stand. So he's going to make atonement for the sin of Jacob, and it's synonymous, it's parallelistic with the removal of sin. Isaiah 28:18, and your covenant with death will be annulled, and your agreement with Sheol will not stand. You will become a trampling place for the overwhelming flood when it passes through. There it's translated as annulled. Isaiah 47:11, and evil shall come upon you, you will not know. It will be on the lookout for her, and disaster shall fall upon you, and you will not be able to avert it, and ruin shall come on you suddenly, you do not know. Here it's being translated, avert it. You won't be able to avert it. Again, atonement's like an aversion. You're averting wrath. You're averting harm, a plague, death, punishment. Jeremiah 18:23, but you, O Yahweh, you know all their plans of assassination against me. You must not make atonement for their iniquity, and you must not cause their sin to be blotted out from before you, but let them be overthrown before you. Deal with them in the time of your anger. So here we can see that this verb, make atonement, is being compared to sin being blotted out before you. So don't make atonement for their iniquity. Don't let their sin be blotted out from before you. It's the idea of not turning away anger and not blotting out. So this idea of blotting out and covering, these are synonyms. So it covers with blood, the idea that it's covered, something covers it. It can be zeal, it can be loyal love, it can be the life that's in the blood, it's covered. So Ezekiel 16:63, we're now in Ezekiel. In order that you will remember and you will be ashamed and you will not open your mouth again because of your disgrace, when I forgive you for all that you have done, declares Lord Yahweh. It says, when I make atonement for you. B'kaprei lecha l'chol asher asit ne'um Adonai Yahweh. When I make atonement for you. Ezekiel 43:20. See, that's interesting. Yahweh makes atonement for them. Ezekiel 43:20, you must take some of its blood and put it on the four horns of the altar and the four corners of the ledge and on the rim all around. Thus you will purify it and make atonement for it. I'm talking about the altar, making atonement for the altar again. Ezekiel 43:26, 7 days they must purify the altar and they must cleanse it so it will consecrate it. There's being translated purify. It's atone. That's Ezekiel 43:26. Yekapru et hamizbeach. You'll make atonement for the altar. They're translating it purify. Ezekiel 45:15. And one sheep from the flock from among 200 from the pastures of Israel will be taken as a grain offering, and as a burnt offering, and as a fellowship offering to make atonement for them, declares the Lord Yahweh. So these different offerings will make atonement. Here, a fellowship offering is included. L'shlamim, so shlamim is included. Ezekiel 45:17, but on the prince shall be the responsibility for the burnt offerings and the grain offering and the libation at the feast and at the new moon festivals and at the Sabbaths and at all the assemblies of the house of Israel. He shall provide the sin offering, the grain offering, and the burnt offering, and the fellowship offering to make atonement for the house of Israel. This is what the prince has to provide in order to make atonement. Part of that's a shlamim. Ezekiel 45:20, and so you shall do on the 7th day in the month for anyone doing wrong, inadvertently or due to ignorance. And so you must make atonement for the temple. So they make atonement for the temple. And then Daniel 9:24, 70 weeks it is decreed for your people and for your holy city to put an end to the transgression and to seal up sin and to make atonement for guilt and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal vision and prophet and to anoint the most holy place. L'kaper avon, to make atonement for iniquity. And that's the last occurrence of this lemma. So there you have it. 102 results in 94 verses. Woo, woo! We did it! 30 minutes. Man, took a lot longer than I thought. Bless you. And before I clock out, just know that we walked through how the lemma kafar, kaf, pei, resh works in the Old Testament. We've got 102 results in 94 verses, and we made it. All right, bless you.